Okay, everybody, we're going to finish up our hallway scene by adding some titles, doing some final cuts to the music, possibly adding a couple of transitions, and finish up our color correction. So let's get to it. So we have our scene. We have our scene where we have the opening shot of our guy walking up, taking a look at the building. Walking into the building, going up the stairs, walking down the hallway, and then we have our back and forth conversation between our two actors, and then the walk away. Okay, so let's start off. I left a couple of seconds of black here at the beginning underneath the music so that we could possibly do some opening titles. So let's make some titles. The key command for making a new title is Command T. Command T for title. Think. Oh, I already just made myself look like an idiot. Used to be Command T. Oh, it is Command T, new text layer. There it is. I just needed to have my timeline window active. All right, so this is pretty easy. We go in here. We can just we can double click on it to bring it up over here, or we can click on it over here, double click. We have all these options. So give me 1 second. All right, so with that new text layer in there, what you want to do is go up to your effects controls panel, which is underneath your source panel, and with that text activated in your timeline, you have all your different properties for that, such as your font weight, your size. You can change the color of it. You can go transform it. So as of right now, with this selected, see this little circle with this crosshairs right here? That means from a paragraph standpoint, this is a left justified text layer. You can change that right here to centered or right justified. But what that little crosshairs is the anchor point. Okay, so as of right now, the position is where it puts that anchor point. So right now it's 960 by 540, which is right in the center of the screen. So even though I might change the justification of the text, that anchor point is still in the center, and that's where it gets its position from. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and center this text, and then let's go up here and click on the font, change it to like Arial, bold, make it bigger. Not too big though, we still want it to be tasteful. All right. Okay, so here's something that Adobe did that they need to fix in future versions. You should be able to double click on this right here, and instead of having nothing come up in your source monitor, have it highlight the text, just like in After Effects or any other program that does this. Or I should be able to click on it here, double click on it, and be able to highlight the text and change the text. No, we have to go down, grab the type tool. Key command for that is T, by the way, and then highlight the text and change it. Okay. All right. There's end rant. Fix it next version, Adobe. You can do it. I know you can. Make it faster for us all. All right. What should we call this? WSU Web 2300. Enter presents. Yeah? Okay. So let me see. With just this presents word highlighted, I'm going to change the size of that down to smaller. WSU Web 2300 presents. All right. We have a title, a little text layer that says WSU Web 2300 presents. Now let's add a transition to this. Here's the thing about transitions. Very similar to the multi-camera editing and some of the other things we've been doing, like what audio and video tracks they drop onto when you tell things to go into the timeline. Adding transitions will respect which tracks you have active, which will be these two tracks right now, video 1 and audio 1. The key command for adding the default transition is Command D. Okay, so with my playhead right here, if I hit Command D, it will put the default transition, which is a cross dissolve, on the beginning and end of this selected clip. So if I undo that, and deselect that clip, hit Command D, it'll place one just at the beginning because that's where the playhead is. Now, if I hit Command Z and change my target track to V2 and hit Command D again, nothing happens because it will place the default transition on anything that's on track 2 with that selected. I can do it to both. So if I have something on track 1 and track 2 and hit Command D, it'll put it on both of those because those are both activated as target tracks. Okay. Here's how to find your transitions. If you go into the Effects panel, which shares the same space as your Project panel down in the bottom left, you have all these audio transitions and video transitions. I would recommend going through a bunch of these and just seeing what they do. But if I go into the Dissolve folder, see that little blue rectangle around the cross dissolve? That means my cross dissolve is set as my default transition. If I want to change the default transition, I can right click on any other transition, set selected as default transition, and it'll put the blue box around that. Then no matter whenever you hit Command D, it'll be that transition instead. The reason by default the cross dissolve is set as your default transition is because cross dissolve is the most commonly used transition, other than a straight cut. Okay, we'll watch what the default transition does. Okay, so let's have a listen to our music and think about when would be most appropriate to bring up the next title. Certain amount of counts in. I'm going to count it for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, change. Does that sound like that's where it ought to go? Okay, so if I look at my waveform down here, this is in the music, you can see it. That's the bump for the next count of 8 to start. So I'm just going to trim this title back to here and hit Command D. Whoops. Command D to add the default transition. And now the transitions appear within the clip like its own little rectangle. The purpose for that is you can change the length of the transition. Right now, the duration is 1 second and 6 frames. The reason for that is our timeline is a 24p timeline, and the default transition length set by Premiere is 30 frames, so that equals 1 second and 6 frames. You can change that default length in your preferences. So if you go up to not general, it's in one of these, this is another thing I don't get into very often. It's the default transition length. Graphics should be in editing. Timeline. Yeah, it's in the timeline. Default transition length, 30 frames. You can change this to seconds and make it 1 second. That way, no matter what the frame rate of your project is, if you set your default transition to 1 second, it'll make it 1 second no matter how many frames you're dealing with in your timeline.
How do you get into that on Windows?
You go up to your, it should be in your file menu, preferences. Am I wrong for Windows?
I'll find it. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Or you can manually change the length of these by clicking on this and dragging it, and then you can below my mouse as I'm dragging this back and forth, that number that's changing, it's moving it to the right, which is plus 14 frames, but I can keep clicking it over until my duration ends up at 12. 12 is half a second in this timeline because it's a 24 frames per second timeline. So it's fading up. Let's make this 1 second because I just like a 1 second transition. So it's going to take 1 second to fade in and half a second to fade out. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's one thing I can do with creating my next title. I'm going to base my second title on this first title. So I'm going to go into my timeline, grab my selection tool, and I think I went over this briefly before, but if you click on this, then hold down Option and drag it over to the side and let go of your mouse, it'll create a duplicate of that title. Let me do it again. I clicked on it, started to drag, held down Option or Alt, and then let go of the mouse first, and it'll create a duplicate. Make sure that you are only selecting one clip, because if it's moving everything, then you have everything selected. Okay, drop it there. Comes with transitions and everything. So now I can go grab my selection tool, T, call this title a Professor Halford That's just not, Professor Halford is too stuffy. Yeah, that's more like it. A Halford Masterpiece Production. That's way less stuffy. That wasn't a funny joke. These titles, the design of the titles, whatever you want to call them, that's up to you. All right. So you call it your own production company, your own, like, use your own fonts, your own design. It's all up to you. Okay. I'm just doing this as demonstration. So let's have a listen and look. All right, so question is, do we like this video popping in or do we want to fade in?
Fade.
Okay, I hear a vote for fade. How do you do it? With my mouse, with my playhead over the beginning of this clip, make sure I've got video 1 target selected, Command D. You can also, since I've got this twirled down, Command D is not the only way to put a transition on. You can actually drag them over. So let's see what a morph cut looks like if I drag it over. You can just drag it over and place it on the end of any clip. Oh, I know Morph Cut. That's right. Can't use Morph Cut. Let's see what a dip to black does. But I have to place, the dip to black only is effective if you go in between two different clips. Nice, right? It's like a fade out, fade in without having to like create black video in between the two clips. It just fades to black and then fades back in. All right, just to show you, while I've got this transition in here, I'm not going to use it. You can change the timing of the transition. So let's say I've got this cut happening on a music beat, but by default, the transition splits the two clips. So it changes the timing of the beginning of the transition. Well, I can just physically grab that transition and have it start on any frame I want. And I can lengthen it out by trimming it and move it over however I need to for timing. Okay, so I'm just going to select that transition because that was just an example and delete it. And I'm going to go back here to the beginning of this clip, the first clip of the video, and hit Command D, and it'll add the cross dissolve. Okay, so we've created a text layer. Now I want to create an honest to goodness. Well, let's just go through some of these settings. You can add a stroke and a drop shadow, but right now it's just on black, so we don't really need to do that. So this is a very limited little text object. There's not really much design in it whatsoever. So let's go and create an actual title, which is like a little miniature Photoshop file or an Illustrator file that it's created within Premiere. I'm going to go over to my graphics assembly workflow, which is up at the top here. So you have assembly, editing, color, effects, audio, and graphics. So let's click on graphics to change our workspace. And over here we have the basic title. So if I drag this down here, that will create a new asset in my, I think. This is driving me crazy. It's all different now. Okay. Yes, Premiere has changed how it does this. There's a thing you can do now with After Effects and Premiere. There's some tutorials on YouTube if you want to look into it. We'll probably do it next semester, but you can actually create an animated title in After Effects and save it as a type of file so that you can load it into these titles. And then within Premiere, you can change the text and change the colors of certain things based on an After Effects project. So you can do more sophisticated looking titles. But for now, let's just do one of these little bugs. Let's do this one. Drag this down.
How do you get the essential graphics to pull up?
If you click on this graphics up here at the top of your workspace, switch it over to graphics. If you're not seeing that, you can go into Window, Workspaces, and then select Graphics. All right. So see this little animation happen? Whee! So now if we click on this, we can go into our effects controls and change the settings of this. So we can change the position of it. We can change the vertical scale, horizontal scale, all this stuff. So let's just move this down. Oh, darn it. We have this shape also. We'd have to move both of these. Or we can do it physically by clicking on our shape and our text, and we can do it visually by dragging it over here. Grab our lines, drag these down. They just disappeared. I'm hating this. Only because it's new. All right. We'll have to come back to that a little bit more. Maybe on our commercial project we can do some more of that stuff. All right, so we have these couple other titles. I'm going to duplicate that again by, actually no, I'm not going to duplicate it. I'm going to make a new one just so we can review making a new title. But right now what we need to do is if I hit Command T in my timeline, it's going to put a title where okay, to create this new text, what I'm going to do is just, I don't like this workflow or this workspace as much, so I'm going to switch back over to the editing one because I just like to see this layout a little bit better. So go back up and either go to Window, Workspaces, Editing, or if you're seeing this panel up here, click on the Editing. Then grab your type tool and then click anywhere in the screen here to place your type, and it'll automatically create this new graphic layer down here. And then I can start typing in my next text. So starring, who's a celebrity we want to pretend this is? Pierce Brosnan. Is it A or O? Brosnan? All right, so that text is all crazy looking. So if I hit my soft return, that'll deselect it, and then if I hit V, that'll put it back to my selection tool, and I can get this binding box around it again. Cool thing about this is now I can just grab it and put it anywhere I want to on my screen. So maybe I'll put it down or over on this side, so that, because I know he's going to walk over to this side of the frame. Oh no, I put him right in the middle. So let's put this over here. So we can go in here and change the font to something. I used Arial before, so maybe I'll stick with that. But if I grab my type tool, select the second line of text, and change the type to something bigger, and then make this second line bold. So see how it's only changing the text that's selected now? Also, an interesting thing that's going on here, I'm going to hit the soft return again, just to deselect that text, and change the leading on this is like super big. So I'm going to make this 100. There, that'll make it fit a little better. Now let's talk about title safe. We're designing titles right now. It's something we still have to worry about a little bit, because with HDTVs there is actually a little bit of the image that's not going to show up on the television. So we're seeing the entire image here, but not all televisions are going to show the full scan. So if you put text really, really close to the edge like this, there is a chance if you're dealing with cheaper televisions, that might actually get cut off the edge of the screen. So what we have to do is go to our view, and if I click on, remember how we got our multi-camera editing tool over here by selecting this plus sign down in the bottom right-hand corner of the program? This is our safe margins. So if I drag that down here and put that in my little workspace, click OK, that'll turn on these safe margins. So it's always a good idea to put your titles inside the inner line. So right there. So one thing that I do when I'm grading anything with titles or graphics is I place it in a timeline, turn on these safe margins, and make sure that your titles are within the title safe area. Whew, okay, nice yawn. So let's go in and let's adjust this a little bit more. This has a shadow on it, but I need to make it so that it's causing the text to pop a little bit better. So I'm going to increase the opacity of it, make it not as soft, and then change the angle that it's coming off to the side, and then change the distance so that I can actually see that text a little bit better. I'm going to turn that up more, turn this down more, not that much, and then make it a little bit closer. So it's just coming off of there a little bit. Can you guys see that okay? Other stuff you could do is mess with colors. You could add, you know, additional shadow boxes underneath. But I'm going to use that for now. Okay, so let's add the default transition to the beginning of this one. So I'm going to select the beginning of that clip, hit Command D, and that'll put a default transition on it. And then I'm going to trim the end of this clip to end at the same time as this shot. So let's watch our opening sequence. Now, can anybody venture a guess as to why I just had that clip end, or the title end with the clip, with that shot? I could have had it fade out before the cut. But if I just kind of figured for my own personal taste that if that title is going to ride all the way to the end of the clip, I might as well just have it end with the clip rather than do like an awkward, try to fade it out, sneak it away. Because if it's a hard cut, then our eye is already going away from it. There's no wrong answer to, you know, the timing. It's just the important thing with titles is you just have to make sure that they're legible and they're on the screen long enough for people to be able to read them. All right, so I was thinking, let's take a vote. I was thinking about putting the title of our film like nice and big over this shot, but we could also do it over this shot.
Makes more sense to do it there because you don't wipe out Elizabeth Hall that way.
Okay. All right. Well, let's copy this text layer over then. Let's hold down Option, drag it to the right, let go of the mouse, creates a copy of it. So we have Pierce Brosnan on this shot. Pierce Brosnan's down the right hand side of the corner. Maybe for the next title we select this instance of it and right justify it. Select that layer, bring it over here, make sure it's title safe. Ooh, see, I put it a little bit too far out. And then adjust the text so that if I hit T, I can select that text. And what's a female celebrity name? Okay, Jessica, is it B-E-I-L? Jessica Biel? Okay, so I can actually move that title over a little bit farther. Soft return, V to select it. All right, here's another thing about positioning. Probably take you back to your Photoshop days. If you are dragging and you want it to stay on the same baseline, and you just want to drag it directly to the side, hold down Shift. Okay. Shift will also, if you drag it up, will move it vertically. So you can move it directly horizontal or directly vertical by holding down Shift. Another little note about changing values is in the Effects Controls panel, underneath Position, let me twirl up this text layer. Oh, I need that down. Underneath the position of it, I can move my mouse over these blue numbers and then click and drag right and left to change the values. So this first number is the X value, so it's going to move it side to side. The second number is going to move it up and down. Okay? And again, that position is based on the anchor point, which is right here. You could also, if dragging it like this isn't moving it fast enough, if I hold down Shift, it'll increase the rate at which those values change, so I can really make it zoom around. Okay. And in the commercial assignment, we're going to talk about scaling and animating our graphics. So let's look at this for timing. Okay, so in this shot, I received criticism from a few of you that this shot was too long, but I'm going to put a couple of key titles right over this shot. That's why it's so long. All right, so how do I duplicate this title? How do I duplicate this one? I want to just create another instance of it over the top of this one. Hold down Option. So start to move it, hold down Option, let go of the mouse, creates a duplicate. Copy and paste will do it too. So, but copy and paste, you got to be careful. Make sure that your target tracks are where they need to be, because I just pasted that down to video 1. So I need to make sure if I'm going to use Command-C, Command-V, that our target track is set to track 2. So there. I like to use the option drag option. All right. All right, so I'm going to center this because I can. It's a new title, new day. Let's just put that in the center. This is another really handy thing of these title safe guides, is they throw a little tag in the middle so you can see where the center is. So I'm just going to put that over the middle, and I'm going to change the type of this by selecting the type tool, T. Change the text to directed by Stefan. Oh. Nope. Stefan Spielborg. Yeah, Spielborg. Okay, because I'm going to have this one fade in and fade out and end within this clip, I'm going to add another default transition to the end. So just select the end of that clip, Command D will add the cross dissolve, and then I can add a second title. What should I have this one be? We've got a director. Should we have a producer credit? Produced by that fired guy. Now we have one last title to go over this, which will be the title of our film. So I'm going to go ahead. Should we create this in Photoshop? You bet. Okay, let's do it in Photoshop. I'm going to open up Photoshop just for good measure. I'm going to Command Tab back over to Premiere and save it. Make sure if anything crashes, I don't lose my work. All right, so to create a new Photoshop file, Command N for new. We got a bunch of presets in here, and I'm going to go to the one over for film and video. Fancy that. So by default, they've gotten smart and realized that most everybody's editing videos in HDTV 1080p. So that's going to be our preset, which is 1920 by 1080. Resolution doesn't matter in video because it's pixel dimensions and not resolution. So you could have a 300 resolution or 72 resolution, it doesn't matter so long as there's enough pixels to fill the frame. Background, I'm going to make the background transparent. And we definitely, in video, you always want to use RGB color because that's what your video is based on. If you put a CMYK graphic into an RGB timeline, there will be some color discrepancies that start showing up. Question?
What did you put new in there? You added this on. What's this new document with it?
Yeah, this is in Photoshop. Yeah, so I opened up Photoshop and did Command N. All right, I'm going to call this main title and then create. So I have a background that's transparent, and check it out. Film and Video will provide you with these guides that are the title and action safe. So we can make sure that we're just designing it within title and action safe. Lovely. All right, so let's go and create a fancy title. What should we call this? Hallway Romances. That's so small. So I'm going to go over to my type panel, which is hidden right now, character panel, and make this bigger. And I need to make it Arial so that it matches all the rest of my graphic design, but I'm going to make it black, regular Arial black. Excellent. Then I can also change this to white. Maybe not make it Arial black. I'm going to make it Arial narrow. No, just regular Arial. No, just kidding. Regular Arial. Sounds good. Now if you want to, just for reference, if you wanted to add another layer, you can add another layer and fill it so that you can actually see the text that you're working with. You can add layer effects to this, so if we wanted to, we could add a drop shadow to it. Or we could do it in, actually do it within Premiere. But I'm going to just add a drop shadow. add drop shadow, and then let's make it darker, change it like this, do something like that, make it something like this, change the angle like so, just so you can see it. And your preview's down here, so you'll be able to see it. Click OK. Maybe I should have made this a white background. There. That drop shadow's too harsh. You like it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't. All right, click OK. Does everybody know how to do like type warping and stuff?
You're eventually going to delete the background so there's nothing there? Or...
Yeah, I'll eventually delete the background. Boing. All right. It's beautiful. It's terrible. It's not a design class. All right. Hallway romances. Now, I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to, actually I don't need to create a new layer. I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to draw a box. We're going to get super, super advanced here today, friends. And I'm going to change with the inside of this, I'm going to make transparent. So no fill. No, no. How do I do that? Make the stroke bigger. There we go.
You have no fill on stroke.
But I want the stroke to be white. There we go. There we go. All right. In my layers. Yeah, it is white. All right. Let's stick it on the layer below. There. Now, just leave it like that. I really butchered that. Let's go back up to the properties here. There, that's more like it. Okay. Excellent. Terrible design, but we're going to do some stuff with it in Premiere anyway. All right, so let's save this. Let's go delete our bottom layer because we don't need that. Save it as main title in our project folder. Go to your drive, go to your project folder, hallway project, assets. Let's add another folder, call it graphics, and save it there. All right, so we have a title with a couple of layers. Here's the benefit to creating titles with multiple layers when you bring it into Premiere. Let's go to our project panel. Let's create a new bin. We'll call it graphics, just for good practice. I'm going to select the graphics folder or the graphics bin and hit Command I. And then I'm just going to go to my recent places for saves and import that main title graphic. Click import. Now, when you get this, if your Photoshop file has more than one layer in it, you can import each individual layer as its own object that you can then rearrange and add effects to and move around on the screen. Or you can bring them all in as one flat graphic. I'm going to bring it in as individual, as a sequence, and that'll bring it in with all of its individual layers that you can animate and fade on in their own time. So click OK here, and that will import that. and there they are. There's my sequence. So main title sequence, and then here's the individual layers. So I can bring in each one of these individual layers that I created in Photoshop. Here's that title. And then we can also double click on this main title sequence, and it'll bring it in to a sequence that you can then change these individually, and then we'll nest this sequence. Talk more about nesting sequences. Question?
Could you just show that import process again?
Yes. Okay, so we saved our Photoshop file, right? If you hit, I'm going to create a new bin for graphics, which is this button down here at the bottom. It's like the new folder button, and call this one graphics. Then I'm going to select that new graphics bin, hit Command I to import, find where I saved the main title PSD, select it, click import. Then we have all these different options. I'm going to import this as a sequence because I have more than one layer and I want to do stuff to them individually. And then I click OK, and I promise you inside that bin is a new bin full of assets for that Photoshop file that we just imported. So if I double click on this one with the little sequence icon, double click on that, it'll open it up in its own sequence for us to do some editing. All right, so what I want to do here is make it so that the Hallway Romances layer fades in earlier than the rectangle. So I'm going to just change the timing of the rectangle so that it comes in a little bit later than the Hallway Romances layer. I'm going to add the default transition to both of those. By selecting each one at the beginning of each one of them and hitting Command D. And now with the rectangle selected, I'm going to go up to the Effects Controls panel and change the opacity of it to like 430, 22, 19%, 20%. So even though it's fading in, the brightest it's ever going to get is to 20%, because that's what it's set at. And then just for giggles, I'm going to trim back both of these back to like 4 seconds. And let's look in our effects panel and look for slides. And we can push it, slide it, push it, slide it, split it, center split it. Let's try to just the slide. I'm going to drop that onto the hallway and see what happens. Okay, so that's a wipe. Let's try the push. Push will actually move it off to the side. So let's use push. I'm going to put push on both of them, but I'm going to change the timing of them again so that maybe the rectangle leaves a little earlier, but faster. So by creating your titles in Photoshop and offsetting the timing and fading them in or moving them around in their own time, you can create kind of a motion graphic. So this main title is a sequence, so we need to put the main title sequence into the hallway scene edit, which is going to be over here Let's go into the project panel and locate it. I actually prefer the list view, so I'm going to switch over to list view, twirl down the graphics, twirl down the main title, and drag this main title sequence into the hallway scene sequence. Oop. It's got audio and video, so I'm just going to turn off these target tracks for audio 1 and audio 2 because I don't want it to destroy anything. And all that animation that I did, okay. So last thing we need to do is figure out how our titles are going to work with our ending music. So let's look at this here. What should we do when, oh wait. Let's just make sure here. Let's just watch this whole opening sequence and see how we like it. What do you think? Does it make y'all warm and tingly inside? Yes. Okay. How should we have this end? She says, "See you later." Music comes back in. What do you think? Should we have it fade out? Should we have it fade out? Or should we have it fade out? Third fade out? Okay, so I'm just going to select this end clip, hit Command D, but I'm going to drag the left edge of that transition over so that it happens a lot longer, like over 3 seconds. Okay, there was a little glitch. Did you guys see it? Let's watch it again. Did you see it? What was it? Okay, it changed because this crossfade started to happen. This clip started going transparent and started revealing this clip underneath it because of the time that I started that crossfade. So how do I solve this problem? Okay, what do you mean by get rid of it? Okay, trim it back this way? Yeah. Okay. I thought you meant select it and delete it.
Just delete it, it's fine.
Just delete it. It'll just leave a blank space here. Yeah, or if for some reason I'm attached to this audio blip right here, do you see that little blip? If I'm attached to that, I could at least just hold down Option and trim this video back. Or I could have just shortened the crossfade. But what if I really want it to be a 3-second crossfade? Yes, trim the bottom video back so that we're not, because it's like starting to expose what's underneath it. It's like, yeah, I don't know, I could come up with all sorts of inappropriate jokes for that, but. What do you think of that crossfade? Does it bring a little tear to your eye? It does mine. And then you can just, I don't know. Should we do rolling titles? No. Let's not do rolling titles because I don't feel like it. You can just add 1 or 2 more titles to the end of this.
Thanks for watching kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for watching.
You have to have that post-credit scene with Samuel L. Jackson.
Copy. I'm gonna do the old copy and paste on this one. I'm gonna copy one of these first 2 and Paste it there. Grab my type tool. Thanks. For watching.
You really want an EM4? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Okay, last thing. Let's cut this music. C, slice it. V, select it. Delete it. You can add transitions to audio as well.
You gotta have it fade out.
Say what?
Fade out.
Have to have the music fade out? Okay, but remember how we've been adjusting audio using the volume envelope so far? Well, you can add the default transition to audio as well, which is just a fade. So the key command to do it to the audio is Command Shift D, and that'll put a fade on audio that's next to the playhead. So maybe I'll have them end similar times. All right. So all I need to do now is finish my color correction, make sure my sound is good, make sure I can hear them talking all the way through, and then I can export this video and it's done. Question real quick.
Is there a way to do, like, in Photoshop they have spot correction for like faces and random blurs? Is there any way to do that in here?
In Premiere?
Yeah.
You can do some isolated corrections in Premiere using Lumetri color, because you can like isolate types of colors and shift them. If you want to do real like blemish removal and stuff like that, then you would probably need to get into more After Effects plugins like Mocha, which is an entire industry of its own. Question?
How would you add that sound transition not using the quick keys?
You would, in order to add it, you would go to the Effects panel, twirl down your audio transitions, crossfade, and then you could drag it directly onto the clip. So you can do crossfades from one audio track to another, just like with video. So speaking of crossfades in video, is there any time in this edit you feel like a crossfade would be appropriate in the video editing, other than fade up and fade to black at the beginning and end? Because when you see a crossfade happen, what does that usually make you feel like is happening? There's been a lapse of time, right? Some undetermined amount of time has passed from one clip to the next clip. That's exactly right. Usually, that's why. So for me, probably the only place would be going into the building, doing like a really quick crossfade here, and maybe changing the time of it. If we do that, then we'll probably have to add a crossfade to the end of this title. And it could be a quick crossfade. I did a quick crossfade out of the other titles, so maybe I should stick with that convention. So let's see. Did that help it or hurt it? I think it's fine either way, honestly. So if you want to add a crossfade, I would say that's probably the only place, except for maybe at the top of the stairs too. Let's see what it looks like. Whoops. Let's see what it looks like if I add another one here. Oh, I don't have much time for one. Okay. This put a 4-second crossfade on this intersection. Does anybody want to venture why? What does this little triangle in the corner of that clip mean? That means that is the beginning of that clip. If I try to trim it out that way, that's actually where I hit the button on the camera to record it. So that's the very beginning of that clip. So there's no more frames to add a transition this way. So I hit Command D. Why did it only put it that far in this way? Why did the transition not become a second long this way? It's because that clip is only that long. So you can't make something out of nothing. So in order to add a transition at the top of the stairs, I would need to shorten one of these clips enough to allow that transition to go underneath the 2 clips. All right. Any questions? Let's see how fast I can do the final color correcting. So this is the one camera angle, which is the same camera that was used to create this shot. So let me go to the Lumetri color for this one, copy it, paste it over to this one, see how good it looks. That helped a bit. Let me go over to color correcting. Let's just go to our basic color, change our exposure so that it maybe looks a little bit better. Let's paste it on this one too, see what happens. That one needs to be warmed up slightly. Maybe the highlights brought up a little bit. Shadows up slightly, blacks down a little. Just kind of try to make them all look like they belong together. I have Lumetri color on this one. Do I on this one also? I do. Yeah, I did those. So that's color corrected. That's got some correction. That does. All right. These do. That does not. But that's the same camera that I used to shoot this angle. So let's see how this one looks. Select that clip, copy the Lumetri color from that, paste it onto this, see how it looks. Looks pretty good. Might need to just bring it up like this a little, highlights down a little. Okay, there's actually more contrast in that. So does that look pretty similar? It's not terrible. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. And then this is that camera. So let's copy the Lumetri from this one. Whoops. Copy that. Paste it to this one. That looks a lot better. And then final one, this is the same shot. So here's one last thing you can do. We'll go over this again. But if you want to just paste properties like effects and stuff, I can hit Command C on this clip with it selected in the timeline. Go over to the next clip. It's actually the same shot, but we didn't do the Lumetri color on the master. This one is, for some reason, got pasted to the hallway scene. You can right-click on this, select Paste Attributes, and then you can tell it to paste. If you've got movement, you got opacity, you got time remapping, you can paste all that stuff. We didn't make any changes to any of that stuff, but if I click OK, and if you have like an entire list of effects, like you got blurs and sharpens and all this other stuff, you can copy all those things over by using the paste attributes. Okay. So let's have one final watch of our scene and see how we like it.
Hey,
Emily,
Caleb, right? Yeah.
how you been?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I've been doing good. Are you still dating, what's his bucket?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When did you get that, last night?
A year ago, actually. Yeah. Well,
Has it been that long?
yep, it has. Well, I gotta go. I'll talk to you later.
Alright, I guess,
I was going that way.
oh, well, I'm going that way. We can go together.
I'll go the other way.
Alright, I guess, see ya.
Okay, what did I miss?
Color collection.
On this one?
The last
It's
scene.
pretty blaring, huh? It's the same shot as this one. So, Command C, go over here, right click on this, paste attributes, click OK. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? I don't know.
You didn't copy it right.
Okay, Command. It's probably because this was done on the master, which is weird because there's the Lumetri there. It should be reflected in this clip also, so that's pretty strange. Anyway, I got it now.
See ya.
That was not my best lecture, you guys. All right.